ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। श्री Ramakrishna Kathamrita Srimakatita. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, recorded by M. Sri Mahendranath Gupta, a disciple and apostle of the Master. The chapter is on Kamal Kutire Sri Ramakrishna or Sri Yukta Keshav Sen. Sri Ramakrishna Bhakta Sange. Sri Ramakrishna in the company of devotees, in Kamal Kutir, and in the company of Keshav Chandra Sen. এইরূপ নানা স্থানে শ্রীযুক্ত কেশবচন্দ্র সেনকে শ্রীরামকৃষ্ণ কথাচ্ছলে নানা উপদেশ দিয়াছিলেন। বেলঘরের বাগানে প্রথম দর্শনের পর কেশব 28 মার্চ 1895 রবিবার মিরর সংবাদপত্রে লিখিয়াছিলেন, So Sri Ramakrishna gave various instructions to Keshav Chandra Sen at various places. And in Belgharia, in the garden house, in the first time when he met him, on 28 March 1875, on Sunday, Keshav Chandra Sen records his experiences of meeting Sri Ramakrishna for the first time. In English, he wrote as follows in the Indian Mirror Journal. We met not long ago Paramahamsa of Dakshineshwar and were charmed by the depth, penetration, and simplicity of his spirit. The never-ceasing metaphors and analogies in which he indulged are most of them as apt as they are beautiful. The characteristics of his mind are the very opposite to those of Pandit Dayananda Saraswati, the former being so gentle, tender and contemplative, as the latter is sturdy, masculine and polemical. Hinduism must have in it a deep source of beauty, truth and goodness to inspire such men as these. These are the impressions which Keshav Chandra Sen recorded in the Indian Mirror, 28 March 1875. January 1876 জানুয়ারি আবার মাঘোৎসব আসিল। তিনি টাউন হলে বক্তৃতা দিলেন। বিষয় ব্রাহ্ম ধর্ম আমরা কি শিখিয়াছি, our faith and experiences. তাহাতেও হিন্দু ধর্মের সৌন্দর্যের কথা অনেক বলিয়াছিলেন। (1876) 1876, in January, once again, Keshav Chandra Sen spoke in the town hall during the Maghotsav on the topic of faith and experiences. Even there, he spoke on the Hindu religion as follows. If the ancient Vedic Aryan is gratefully honored today for having taught us the deep truths of the Nirakar or the bodiless spirit, The same loyal homage is due to the later Puranic Hindu for having taught us religious feelings in all their health and breadth and type and depth. In the days of the Vedas and the Vedanta, India was all communion, yoga. In the days of the Puranas, India was all emotion, bhakti. The highest and the best feelings of religion have been cultivated under the guardianship of specific divinities. So these are the statements made by Keshav Chandra Sen when he spoke and we wrote in the Indian Mirror, after having seen Sri Ramakrishna, how his ideas about the Hindu religion underwent a huge metamorphosis. শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণ তাহাকে যেমন ভালোবাসিয়া ছিলেন, কেশবও তাকে তদ্রূপ ভক্তি করিতেন। প্রায় প্রতি বৎসর ব্রাহ্মোৎসবের সময় ও অন্যান্য সময়ও কেশব দক্ষিণেশ্বরে যাইতেন ও তাহাকে কমলকুটিরে লইয়া আসিতেন। Even as Sri Ramakrishna had great love and affection for Keshav Chandra Sen, Keshav also reciprocated this feeling of love and affection and bonding, and he had great devotion also to Sri Ramakrishna and respect. Every year during Brahmotsava, the festival of the Brahmos, and even at other times, Keshav used to visit Dakshineshwar, and he also used to invite Sri Ramakrishna to Kamalkutir and bring him also to Kamalkutir. কখনো কখনো একাকী কমলকুটিরের দ্বিতলস্থ উপাসনা কক্ষে পরম অন্তরঙ্গ জ্ঞানে ভক্তি ভরে লইয়া যাইতেন ও একান্ত ঈশ্বরের পূজার আনন্দ করিতেন। Oftentimes, Keshav Chandra Sen used to take Sri Ramakrishna alone in the first floor of the Kamalkutir, where there was a prayer room, Upasana Kaksha, where Upasana or prayer was conducted, and worshipped Sri Ramakrishna with great devotion, knowing that he is so near to his heart and spirit. And he worshipped Ishvara with great joy. 1897 ভাদ্রোৎসবের সময় আবার কেশব শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণের নিমন্ত্রণ করিয়া বেলঘরের তপোবনে লইয়া যান। In Belghar, Tapovana, the place where he built for tapasya, in 1879, Keshav Chandra Sen again invited Sri Ramakrishna and took him there. 15 September সোমবার, in that year 1879, 15th of September Monday, আবার 21 সেপ্টেম্বর কমলকুটির উৎসবে যোগদান করিতে লইয়া যান। On 15th of September 1879, and again on 21st of September, same year, Keshav Chandra Sen invited Sri Ramakrishna to Kamalkutir to participate in the festival, Brahmotsava. এই সময় শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণ সমাধিস্থ হইলে ব্রাহ্ম ভক্ত সঙ্গে তাহার ফটো লওয়া হয়। ঠাকুর দণ্ডায়মান, সমাধিস্থ, হৃদয় ধরিয়া আছেন। The photograph which we see of Sri Ramakrishna standing in samadhi like this photograph was taken during this time in Kamalkutir. Sri Ramakrishna went into deep samadhi and his photograph was taken. Sri Ramakrishna was standing in samadhi and Hridayaram Mukhopadhyaya was supporting him lest he falls down. 22 अक्टूबर महाष्टमी नवमीर दिन केशव दक्षिणेश्वरी गया ताहाके दर्शन करिलेन. Again 22nd of October during the Durga Puja Mahashtami and Mahanavami, Keshav Chandrasen went to Dakshineshwar to have darshan of Sri Ramakrishna. 1879 29 অক্টোবর বুধবার কোজাগর পূর্ণিমার বেলা একটা সময় কেশব আবার ভক্ত সঙ্গে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণকে দক্ষিণেশ্বরে দর্শন করিতে যান. Again he is carefully recording all these historical occasions. 1879 29th of October, Wednesday, at the time of Kojagara Purnima, immediately after Lakshmi Puja, after Durga Puja, which gets over on Dashami, the following Purnima is celebrated Lakshmi Puja. It's called Kojagari Lakshmi Puja. Jagari means waking up. Ko means who. The lore has it that night Lakshmi goes round and asks, who is awake? Who is awake? Kojagari, Kojagari. And whoever is awake is given huge amount of wealth and prosperity. See, all these various lore came into existence just to lure man's mind which is attached to objects, which is subject to worldly objects, lure it away and fix it on God. If somebody has faith that Lakshmi will come and they'll give some wealth, he or she will be waking up the whole night and she or she will be waiting, thinking of God, thinking of Lakshmi, anticipating the visit of Lakshmi as it were, and the whole night will be spent in happy remembrance of God. That is the way so many different festivals are organized in all the religions of the world. স্টিমারের সঙ্গে একখানি বজরা, ছয়খানি নৌকা, দুইখানি ডিঙ্গি, প্রায় 80 জন ভক্ত. Along with the steamer in which Keshav Chandrasen, Ramakrishna and some devotees were there, along with that there were so many boats, smaller and bigger, and a huge troop of people, about 80 people were traveling on the Ganges. সঙ্গে পতাকা, পুষ্প পল্লব, খোল করতাল, ভেরি. So they had pushpa pallav, that means they had a lot of flowers and leaves, tender leaves, then the drums and cymbals and the various percussion instruments, accompaniments to music. হৃদয় অভ্যর্থনা করিয়া কেশবকে স্টিমার হইতে আনেন. গান গাইতে গাইতে সুরধুনির তীরে হরি বলোকে বুঝি প্রেমদাতা নিতাই এসেছে. Hridayram Mukhopadhyay welcomed him at the ghat and led Keshav and the devotees who were singing the song Suradhinire Tire at the bank of the wonderful river of music, Hari Bole Ke. Which is this Hari? Who is this Hari? Oh, well, Premadata Nitai Bujhi Esheche. Hari has come, Narayana, the Supreme Lord, has come assuming the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Mahaprabhu, Gaura Nitai. Nitai who is the Parshada, companion of Sri Chaitanya, who is the Premadata, a giver of divine ecstatic love for God. Brahma Bhakta Gano Panchavati hoite Kirtan Kurite Kurite Tahar Sangade Ashite Lagelen Satchidananda Vigraha Rupananda Ghana. The Brahma devotees also were singing Kirtan, collective devotional singing, and moving from Panchavati towards the Ramakrishna's place, singing. One line is given here, Satchidananda Vigraha, the very embodiment of existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, Sat Chit Ananda, Rupananda Ghana. He is, as it were, condensed form of divine bliss, Rupananda. Tahader Madde Thakur Majhe Majhe Samadhistho. Sri Ramakrishna was there in their midst, dancing and singing, and now and then he went into deep samadhi and became motionless. এই দিনে সন্ধ্যার পর বাধাঘাটে পূর্ণচন্দ্রের আলোকে কেশব উপাসনা করিয়াছিলেন. On this day, during the dusk evening, in the Badhaghat, a particular place, Keshav was performing his upasana, calling on God and doing worship of God in his own way, the Brahmo way, in the beautiful moonlight of the full moon. উপাসনার পর ঠাকুর বলিতেছেন, তোমরা বলো ব্রহ্ম আত্মা ভগবান, ব্রহ্ম মায়া জীব জগৎ, ভাগবত ভক্ত ভগবান. These are all some stock phrases and slogans which Sri Ramakrishna used to repeat and used to ask everybody to repeat to create the vibration. Brahma, Atma, Bhagavan. What you call Bhagavan in devotional parlance is the same as Atma in Vedanta, and which is identical with the supreme Brahman or the transcendental reality of Vedanta. Brahma, Atma, Bhagavan. Brahma, Maya, Jiva, Jagat. Brahman is a supreme reality, and Jiva and Jagat, the individual beings in the world, human beings and subhuman beings, and all of them, Jagat, this universe, covered by Maya, which is the power of God, and Brahman. Brahma, Maya, Jiva, Jagat, Bhagavata, Bhakta, Bhagavan. This is based on a realization which Ramakrishna actually had. There was a scholar, a Pandit, who was reading from the Bhagavatam with great devotion. Sri Ramakrishna was there listening, and he suddenly saw a ray of light coming from the scripture, the Bhagavatam, emanating from the feet of Sri Krishna, the Murti, the Vigraha, the form which was there, the image which was there. From Sri Krishna, a ray of light emerged. It touched the Bhagavatam, the book, the scripture, and came and touched the heart of Sri Ramakrishna, and forming a triangle of light, Bhagavata, Bhakta, and Bhagavan. From that time, Sri Ramakrishna began saying very commonly, repeatedly, often, Bhagavata, Bhakta, Bhagavan. The Bhagavata, the scripture, Bhakta, the devotee, and the Bhagavan, the supreme reality or God, all of them are three in one or one in three. Sri Ramakrishna আবার যখন বলিলেন, বলো Guru, Krishna, Vaishnava. Krishna is the Ishtadevata, the reality to be realized, and Guru is the teacher, the preceptor, who reveals the true nature of the Lord, and Vaishnava is the devotee. This is a purely Vaishnava tradition, Guru, Krishna, Vaishnava. তখন কেশব আনন্দে হাসিতে হাসিতে বলিতেছেন, মহাশয় এখন এত দূর নয়, গুরু কৃষ্ণ বৈষ্ণব আমরা যদি বলি লোকে বলিবে গোড়া। Slowly Sri Ramakrishna is pushing Keshav Chandra Sen to the idea of the formful God as being identical and non-different from the formless God. Keshav Chandra Sen, being the Brahmo, did not believe in the images of God, the form of God. Nirakara, formless God. So Ramakrishna wants to impress upon him the formless God, the Nirakara which you worship, is the same as the Sakara, the God with form. He often used to give the beautiful example. In a vast ocean of Satchidananda, certain blocks of ice are floating. How did they get formed? By the cooling influence. Suddenly it gets so cold and blocks of ice are formed on water. What are the blocks of ice? They are water only, but frozen into blocks of ice with form. This is like Ishvara with form, Sakara, a God with form. And when the sun rises, the sun of Jnana, knowledge rises, then these ice again melt and become water. Nothing has changed. What was water became ice because the cooling influence of devotion or bhakti. And the same ice melts away into water again because of the heat of Jnana, or the rising sun. So what you call as God without form, the waters of the ocean, is the same as God with the form, the blocks of ice formed in the ocean because of the cooling influence of the bhakti or devotion of the devotee. So, Keshav Chandra Sen said, Sir, not that far. Brahma Atma Bhagavan, Brahma Maya Jiva Jagat, Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan. Up to that, everybody was repeating together with Ramakrishna. Bolo, come on, chant with me. Brahma Atma Bhagavan, Brahma Atma Bhagavan. Everybody repeats. Brahma Maya Jiva Jagat, Brahma Maya Jiva Jagat. Everybody repeats. Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan, Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, Guru Krishna Vaishnava. Then Keshav Chandra Sen smiles and says, Oh sir, not that far. Mashai, ekhon etodur noy, not that far right now. Because if we say Guru Krishna Vaishnava, then people will say we are again fanatical like the Vaishnavas. Vaishnavas are proverbially fanatical, and those who are slightly rationally minded, scientifically oriented, they did not quite like the fanaticism of the Vaishnavas. Sri Ramakrishna হাসিতে লাগিলেন ও বলিলেন, বেশ, তোমরা এতদূর পার তাহাই বলো. Sri Ramakrishna smiled and said, well, you people, Brahmos, can repeat as far as you can comfortably go. কিছুদিন পরে 13 নভেম্বর 1897 1879 কালী পূজার পরে রাম মনমোহন গোপাল মিত্র দক্ষিণেশ্বরে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণকে প্রথম দর্শন করেন. After a few days, and 13th of November 1879, not 97, Kali Puja pore, after Kali Puja is held on the Amavasya following Lakshmi Puja. This is the sequence. Durga Puja is celebrated for 4 days. Saptami, Ashtami, Navami, and Dashami is the Visarjan, where the image of Durga is consigned to the waters. Then the Purnima following is celebrated Lakshmi Puja, Kojagari Lakshmi Puja, and the Amavasya thereafter, 15 days later, comes the Kali Puja. The whole night the Kali Puja is conducted. Following Kali Puja, the 9th day, Navami or Saptami, Ashtami, Navami, in some traditions, Mother is celebrated as Jagadhatri. In the eastern part of India and the northeastern part of India, which is totally devoted to the worship of Shakti, Divine Mother, so many types of Shakti Pujas come. You have the Durga Puja, then you have the Lakshmi Puja, then you have the Kali Puja, then you have the Jagadhatri Puja. Then after a couple of months, in late January or early February, you have the Saraswati Puja. The same divine power, Shakti, is worshipped in innumerable forms so that a person can have devotion to any one of them or all of them and be awakened in spiritual consciousness. That's the idea. So on that day of Kali Puja, after Kali Puja, Rama, Manamohan, Gopal Mitra, all of them are devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. They will become very staunch devotees later, but on that day they had the first darshan, vision of Sri Ramakrishna. 1880 ख्रीष्टाब्दे 1880 एक दिन ग्रीष्मकाले राम मनमोहन कमलकुटीरे केशवेर सहित देखा करते आसियाछिलेन. In 1880, during summer, Ram and Manamohan, both of them came to Kashipur, Kamalakutir, not Kashipur, Kamalakutir, to meet Keshav Chandra Sen. তাহাদের ভারী জানিতে ইচ্ছা কেশব বাবু ঠাকুরকে কি রূপ মনে করেন. Because they became devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, they were very curious to know what was Keshav Chandra Sen's impression of Sri Ramakrishna. Because Keshav Chandra Sen at that time was a great celebrity. Don't think he was an ordinary person. We had so much of power of speech, the Vak. They say when he used to speak, tears used to flow down his cheeks. With so much of feeling and emotional fervor, devotional fervor he used to speak. And the youths of Bengal were so highly motivated, inspired, and impressed with Keshav. Can you imagine Narendranath Datta, the future Vivekananda, being under the sway of Keshav Chandra Sen? The firebrand Narendranath Datta is not a person who can be kept under anybody's sway. That shows the power of Keshav. But now, of course, we don't have any Keshav Chandra Sen or Brahma Samaj remaining anymore. Sri Ramakrishna completely swallowed all of them into his liberal views. But Sri Ramakrishna had so much of love and affection for Keshav, and he chose and picked up many of his chief disciples, sannyasin disciples, from among the devotees and the followers of Keshav. Narendranath Datta, later Vivekananda, Rakhal, later Swami Brahmananda, Shashi, future Ramakrishnananda, Sharat, later Swami Sharadananda, all of them were picked up from the Brahma Samaj by Sri Ramakrishna. So that was the power of Keshav. Why I am mentioning this? Because we should now know what was Keshav at that time, contemporary time, 1880s. Keshav Chandra Sen was so famous, is a celebrity. He went to England and was given the privilege of shaking hands with Queen Victoria. That was his power. কেশব বাবাকে জিজ্ঞাসা করিতে বলিলেন, so they asked Keshav Chandra Sen what his impression of Sri Ramakrishna was. Keshav Chandra Sen replies, দক্ষিণেশ্বরের পরমহংস সামান্য নহেন, এই ক্ষণে পৃথিবীর মধ্যে এত বড় লোক কেহ নাই। Do not think Ramakrishna, the Paramahamsa of Dakshineshwar, is an ordinary person. At this moment, in the whole universe, the whole world, there is none like Sri Ramakrishna. So great in spirituality, ইনি এত সুন্দর, এত অসাধারণ ব্যক্তি, ইহাকে অতি সাবধানে সন্তর্পণে রাখতে হয়। Keshav Chandra Sen says this to his disciples. He is so wonderful, beautiful, so extraordinary, and he has to be very carefully kept and guarded as if in a glass case. অযত্ন করলে এর দেহ থাকবে না। Unless you carefully preserve his body, tenderly, gently, carefully, affectionately, respectfully, the body will not last long. He should not be played with. He is such an extraordinarily elevated sattvic body and soul. He has to be carefully guarded and protected, as it were. যেমন সুন্দর মূল্যবান জিনিস গ্লাস কেসে রাখতে হয়, just as a very valuable, extraordinary, priceless treasure has to be carefully preserved in a glass case, Sri Ramakrishna should be preserved and protected in the same fashion. ইহার কিছুদিন পরে 1881 মাঘোৎসবের সময় জানুয়ারি মাসে কেশব শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণের দর্শন করিতে দক্ষিণেশ্বরে যান। তখন রাম, মনমোহন, জয়গোপাল সেন প্রভৃতি অনেকে উপস্থিত ছিলেন। After a few days of this statement, in 1881, during Maghotsava, Magha festival, in January, Keshav came to Dakshineshwar to have darshan of Sri Ramakrishna. At that time, Ram, Manomohan and Joygopal Sen, all of them were present. 1803 শক পয়লা শ্রাবণ, শুক্রবার 15 জুলাই 1881, কেশব আবার শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণের দক্ষিণেশ্বর হইতে স্টিমারে লইয়া যান। The first one is the Bengali year. I read only the English year. 15th of July, Friday, 1881. Once again, Keshav Chandra Sen accompanied Sri Ramakrishna on a steamer ride of the Ganges. 1881 নভেম্বর মাসে মনমোহনের বাটিতে যখন ঠাকুর শুভাগমন করেন, তখন উৎসব হয়। তখনও কেশব নিমন্ত্রিত হইয়া উৎসবে যোগদান করেন। শ্রীযুক্ত ত্রৈলোক্য প্রভৃতি গান করিয়াছিলেন। He is carefully recording all the meetings between Sri Ramakrishna and Keshav Chandra Sen. Such a great, historically correct, perfect record. Again in 1881 November, in the house of Manomohan, Sri Ramakrishna came and there was a great festival. At that time, Sri Ramakrishna saw that Keshav also had come there. Having been invited, he participated in the festival. At that time, Trailokya, etc. were singing. Trailokya Sanyal was a great disciple and composer and singer. So many wonderful songs he wrote, of which one was very favorite of Sri Ramakrishna, and he said, this song has exactly caught my real mood or bhava. Amai de ma pagol kore brahmamoyi, de ma pagol kore brahmamoyi, de ma pagol kore. আর কাজ নাই মা জ্ঞান বিচারে, দে মা পাগল করে ব্রহ্মময়ী, দে মা পাগল করে ব্রহ্মময়ী, দে মা পাগল করে. Oh, Mother, made me mad with divine love. What need have I for knowledge or devotion, knowledge or discussion? Jnana vichare, ratiocination, knowledge and logic chopping. I don't need all this logic and argumentation and the so-called knowledge which is bookish. I want to become mad with thy divine love. Ultimately, logic and reasoning don't lead you very far. It stops at a point. It is the divine love in the heart which opens up that which is beyond. There is a philosophical significance to this statement, which is Ramakrishna's very favorite sentiment, and that is the following. Let us carefully analyze this. Unfortunately, we have this analysis in the brain. All of us are struggling to realize God, spiritual aspirants, I mean, whether it's a sannyasi, whether it's a householder, whoever. One who is very serious about spiritual life, struggling to realize a supreme being, God, through various kinds of sadhana or spiritual practices. Now, all the spiritual practices that you do are performed in the mind, with the body cooperating and the senses. You can't get out of the body and the senses and the mind to be able to practice, whether it is meditation, whether it is worship, whether it is puja, whatever be the practice that you have. All that you do in the form of spiritual practice is using the mind and the body as a karana, as instruments. What are the instruments that you use during spiritual practice? The body, senses, mind, buddhi, and so on. Now, all of these instruments, the body, the mind, the intellect, the senses, all of them are within the realm of relativity. What does relativity mean? Space, time, and causation. Desha kala nimitta. What are we trying to do? By using these instruments of the body, the mind, the senses, and the intellect, which are in relativity, space, time, and causation, we are struggling and attempting to realize that which is beyond relativity, beyond space, time, and causation. Is it possible? All the attempts that you make are within space, time, and causation. And that you want to realize is beyond space, time, and causation. So there is a huge mismatch, and reasoning will tell you that is just not possible. It has been repeatedly mentioned in the Upanishads, in the Gita, everywhere. All the great religious scriptures of the world. This has to be beyond understanding, the peace that passeth understanding, as Jesus the Christ said. That supreme shanti or peace, not the ordinary peace that you have in this world, which is absence of disturbance, absence of noise, but it is a peace that passeth understanding is beyond the intellect, beyond the mind, beyond the senses. The supreme peace, Paramashanti. All the religions talk about this. The mind cannot reach there. The speech and the senses cannot reach there. Yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasasa. Taittiriya Upanishad. Yan manasana manute yenahuru manomatam tadeva brahmatvam vidhenedam yadidam upasate. Kena Upanishad. The mind cannot think of this. But that supreme reality or the Brahman gives the mind the power to be able to think. And the mind cannot think of it. Because thought is limited. Thought has to commit suicide. As Bradley perhaps said in the Western world. In the Vedanta we call it manonasha. The mind is killed, the mind is to be destroyed so that you may be able to realize that which is beyond the mind. Mind commits suicide, as it were. So the mental suicide which leads you to spiritual realization. The thought has to stop. Mind has to stop thinking. What is mind? Mind is a collection of thoughts. And therefore mind stops thinking, thoughts vanish, the mind vanishes. Manonasha is called. Mind becomes no mind. Amani bhava. The Mandukya Karika says, Amani bhava. That which is mind earlier becomes no mind later. When this happens, the flash of realization of that which is beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, beyond the senses, beyond space, time and causation just occurs spontaneously as it were in a flash. Now all the struggles that you make, then they are meaningless. Because these struggles are being undertaken by the sadhaka, by the spiritual aspirant, within space, time and causation, the relative world, the relative universe, with the instruments of the body, the senses, mind and the intellect. Then what do? You need a connection between the world which is relative, within space, time and causation, and the world which is absolute, beyond space, time and causation. What is the connecting link? This connecting link is called love, bhakti. Why? Even in ordinary worldly love, love of a man and a woman, love of a mother for a child, love of a rich man for his riches, property and so on. All this love also is not based on reason or a rationality. Why did you like him? Why do you love him? I don't know why. I feel deep bonding and affection and love for him or her. Why? I don't know why. There is no why in love. Carefully think about this. Even in ordinary worldly love, there is no why. Oh, that woman is not that beautiful. She is not that handsome. Why did you begin to love her? I don't know, but somehow I feel deeply attracted to her or deeply attracted to him. This is what we hear in the world. What does this mean? Somehow is an expression for non-causality. Everything in the relative universe happens because of certain causes. I have a terrible cold with a mild fever. Why? I got drenched in the rain yesterday. And therefore today I am feeling cold. I've got cold, I've got fever. Drenching in the rain was a cause yesterday, and being caught by cold and fever is the effect today. Karana and Karya. Karya is the effect. Karana is the cause. It's called Karya Karana Samparka. the relationship between cause and effect. This is the causal chain. So unless the causal chain is broken, you go beyond the causal chain, you can't realize the highest. Causality has to stop. There has to be a break in the wall of causality, as quantum mechanics will tell you. This is a great challenge in quantum mechanics. Causality seems to be failing. When the causality cracks down and there is a crack, there is a crevice in the wall of causality, you can peep into the infinite which is beyond causality. Beyond reason, beyond causality. And therefore, the supreme reality or Brahman or God is said to be beyond reason. Ar kaaj nai ma gyan bichare dema pagol kore. Gyan bichara, pursuing reason, logically formulating God. You may talk about all this. You may have a beautiful explanation of the characteristics of God. There's a funny joke. There's a great Christian theologian. He wrote about the various qualities of God. Compassion of God. God's compassion, God's kindness. God is beautiful, the beauty of God. And the greatness of God, the majesty of God. The simplicity of God. These are all various qualities. Saulabhya, it is called in Sanskrit, Sulabha. God is simple, straightforward, easily accessible. The beauty of great men is that they are easily accessible. If you find a person who doesn't make himself or herself not easily accessible, then you will know that person is a very complicated person. In Sri Ramakrishna's case, you can see the very first page of the Gospel of Ramakrishna tells you how Mahendranath Gupta was trying to enter into Sri Ramakrishna's room, and the room was just, the door was closed because they were giving some dhuno. Dhuno means some ingredients are put there with a little charcoal so that beautiful smoke comes out as a disinfectant, like incense. So he is asking the servant maid there, Brinde, may I go in? Then Brinde says, oh no, simply go, push the door and enter and sit. No privacy. The concept of privacy, private space, the entire concept is Western concept, where you want to make yourself important by saying that I can't be met anytime you like. Have you made an appointment? This appointment people are the most complicated people. It may be necessary for functioning. It may be necessary because the work has to go on. In the case of work, sometimes it may be useful. But in general, don't say that you have to be met an appointment. God doesn't need an appointment. Anytime you call him, he is there present. You don't make an appointment with your wife or children. Because they are the nearest kith and kin. Anytime you have to be available, you are available. Because of love. Love completely kills the idea of complicatedness. The complicity which people profess is because they are empty within, and therefore they want to put up a show of complexity so that they become inaccessibly important. God is Sulabha. Saulabhya is considered a very important quality of God. God is full of karunya, compassion, love, tenderness, affection. Samipya, God is very near you. So these are certain qualities of God, and Ramanujacharya, the great Bhakti Acharya of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, the tradition of Sri Vaishnavas, When he talks about the various qualities and gives the adjectives of God, he goes into ecstasy. Lavanya, Saulabhya, Karunya, Ananta Kalyana, Gunamahodati, infinite ocean of so many great qualities. Sulabha. So the Christian theologian wrote so many huge books on the qualities of God, and the book on the simplicity of God is 1,000 pages to prove how God is so simple. An old pious Christian lady, simple lady, unsophisticated, very little education she had, but so much of faith and devotion she was full of. And the theologian was expounding the simplicity of God and showing this book. See, this book, if you can read, then this lady with great devotion said, is the simplicity of God so complex? Simplicity of God can't be complex. Our stupid intellect, rationality, so-called scientific orientation of the mind. I want reason for everything. How far can your reason go, sir? Reason will go to some extent, then he has to kill itself. I am not saying this. This is a statement made by people who have pursued reason to the end. The huge revolutionary concept by the Gödel's theorem, or Gödel's theorem is also pronounced that way, which proved a death knell for formalistic logic. Mathematical logic was killed by this theorem, which showed that it has a limit. It can't go beyond a point. Bertrand Russell and Whitehead had formulated the mathematical logic with such precision. Gödel came and smashed the whole thing to smithereens by his simple theorem, which said there are certain true statements which can neither be disproved or proved within the framework of a closed system of formalistic logic. Then does God exist? You prove that God exists. Then I will tell you, can you disprove that God exists? When you can't disprove and I can't prove, let us be friends. There are certain true statements which are felt deeply, transcending reason, and they can't be caught within the network of reason and logic. The logic and reason have to kill themselves in order that you can attain God. Simple devotion, feeling. Feeling has no reason. Affection, love is unreasonable many times. You suddenly like something, suddenly become so fond of certain things, you love somebody, love something without any reason. I don't know why, but I somehow feel very much attracted. Why do you not know why? You are a scientific person, you are a rational person. Why irrationally you love somebody? Can be rational love? Think about all these things very carefully. And can you mention two types of people in the world who have no reason or logic? They perform, they move around, they speak, they function in the world completely without logic, but they are so charming. One is children. Children are not guided by logic or reason, but just they spontaneously and happily perform, and everybody is so charmed by children. When a cute young child is there in the crowd, he or she is the cynosure of all eyes. Why? Because the child functions from a plane which is beyond logic. He may be ignorant, but he doesn't function within the framework of logic. Unfortunately, when we grow from childhood into adulthood, we get educated, quote unquote, And the education brings us with that all the vices of logic and reason, and we lose the innocence which we had as children. For a child, everything is a great wonder. The world itself is a great wonder for a child. You're waiting at the airport, you're waiting at the railway station, and the plane is delayed or the train is delayed. All the logical reasoning elders are so restless, unhappy, impatient, finding fault with the railways, finding fault with the government, with the airlines, moving around restlessly. Why are you so illogical? It has been announced for a technical fault. It can't take up in time. It will take off in time. There will be a delay of 1 hour. It has been announced. The reason is given. So calmly sit for 1 hour. But what does the child do? Child is so happy moving around here and there, watching the signals, watching people, and going to unknown people and trying to pinch them. Child, hey, where did you go? He goes to somebody, and one gentleman is reading something, he will snatch away the book and give him a small push. And he doesn't get angry, he enjoys every bit of it. Why? Because if you don't perform logically and reasonably, rationally, you are so charming. Because you function from a plane which is not logical or rational, and therefore not bound by time and space and causation. The second person who is not bound by logic and reason is a madman, Pagol. Because there is no reason. You can't punish a madman and punish a child for doing something which is not acceptable to society. Because society has its own peculiar laws, most of which are illogical. We have put in these laws to bind the people, to regulate them, to confine them to certain limits, and then claim that we are lawmakers, law abiders. What law can bind God? Swami Vivekananda writes a beautiful letter to Francis Leggett, and he was very fond of nicknaming everybody. He called him Frankincense. He says, at 20 years of age, I was the most uncompromising, unsympathetic fanatic. I would not walk in the streets by the theatre side. At 33, I can live in the same house with prostitutes and not feeling like saying a word of reproach or condemnation to them. Is it degenerate? Or is it that I am growing into that universal love which is God Himself? They want explanations. But how can you explain Him? He is brainless and He is fooling us with little brains. He has no brains because He is beyond logic, and He has given us some stupid logical brain and playing this great fun of this world. I have my logic, you have your logic, and these logics clash, and there's a heat is produced, not light. He is brainless and is fooling us with little brains. This time He won't find me napping. I have found a thing or two beyond logic and reason. That love. I Sakhe means friend. I Sakhe. Let us drink the cup of love and become mad. Yours ever in madness, Swami Vivekananda. He is in the mood of a divine child playing, intoxicated with the divine love. Dema pagol kore, tomare premer shura, pane karo mato vara, Oma bhakta chitta hara duba, প্রেম সাগরে দেমা পাগল করে আর কাজে নাই মা জ্ঞান বিচারে দেমা পাগল করে তোমার প্রেমের সুরা the divine intoxicant like liquor, alcohol, the divine intoxicant of your divine love, I drink it again and again and become mad, become intoxicated. And get drowned, as it were, in the ocean of divine love. Oh, make me mad with thy love. Rabindranath's beautiful poem, The Gardener, it is translated into English. Oh, mad, superbly drunk. That is the title of the poem. I want to become mad, superbly drunk. I am tired of living constantly with wise people, wise quote unquote, who are full of logic, full of reasonableness, full of rationality and scientific temperament. I am tired of being with them. For a change, let me live with the people who are simple, who are innocent, and who don't bind themselves with the logic. And they are spontaneous and free like a child. I want to throw away all this rationality, be fully drunk with the divine love, and go to the dogs. I had enough of these people. There are people who are easily the best, Rabindranath says. There are persons who are easily the best, and the next best follow thereafter. So I want to cut away from the company of these people and go to somebody who is mad, who is drunk with divine ecstatic devotion, and live in the company of such a person rather than people who excel in this world. This is the buzzword now, excel. What is your excellence? Competitive, aggressive, jealous excellence. You compete with the other man. Every company competes with the other company. Every sports person competes with the other sports person. Every country competes with the other country. Every intelligent professor or a student or a scholar competes with the other person. I want to excel. We do not want aggressive, competitive excellence. Then what is the kind of excellence we are aspiring for? We want that excellence which is tied up with the ideal. The ideal is this much, and I am so far below. Can I excel continuously day after day, month after month, year after year, through struggles, through blood, toil, and tears and sweat, as Winston Churchill wrote? Can I do that? Persevere to be able to excel in order to reach that ideal. So I do not compete with anybody, but I compete with my previous state of existence yesterday. Yesterday I was here, I excel myself to be able to go up, inch by inch, little by little, so that I can reach the ideal. There is a non-competitive, non-aggressive, true excellence, for which I do not need much cleverness. So clever, wise people with whom we constantly move around, calling them great intellectuals, Rabindranath says, I do not want to be in their company anymore. I've had enough of this company of these people. I want to be superbly drunk, become mad, and go to the dogs. The whole world will laugh at me, but let them laugh. Let the wise people laugh at me, but I have the supreme joy of being excellent. So Ramakrishna will mention this very soon. Or we read it even earlier, how a wise man, a man of knowledge behaves. Balakavat, Jadavat, Unmadavat, Pishachavat. A man of knowledge, a man of realization, a jnani, a supreme bhakta. How does he behave? Behaves like a child. Jadavat behaves like an inert person. When he sees some clever, wise people approaching, he becomes so inert, like a dull, stupid fellow. The other persons come and then walk away. He is very happy. Jadavat, Unmadavat, like an insane person, mad person. And Pishachavat, like a Pishacha, like a ghoul. He behaves in any way he likes. He is not confined or controlled by logic. How many beautiful instances there in Ramakrishna's life. There is a simple instance in his life. There is a flood tide in the Ganges. Flood tide, suddenly it's called Ban. Flood tide, suddenly the Ganges rises high, and it's very beautiful to say, again it ebbs away. So when people were resting at an odd time, suddenly somebody shouted, hey, Ban has che, flood tide is there in the Ganges. You have to quickly go and see, otherwise it will ebb away. So Ramakrishna was lying down, threw away his clothes, and like a child ran, and he saw and was rejoicing. Other people were trying to make their clothes tidy so that they appear gentle. By the time they went, the flood tide is ebbed away. So Ramakrishna smiles and says, oh, you are so careful adjusting your clothes. So for me, there's no problem. Children, you will see, the mother clothes them so beautifully. When nobody is around, they'll throw away the clothes and walk away. Or run around. You can't catch them so easily also. The mother runs behind, hey, so uncivilized. The child doesn't understand what is civilization, what is civilized behavior. So we can't imitate the child unless we have the childlikeness genuinely, sincerely, to the core of our being. It happens when you touch the feet of God, because He is the most simple beyond logic. That's why Ramakrishna often says, throw away this logical brain. We have enough of these clever, wise people. Be in the company of people who are simple, who are genuine, who have the great heart, the uneducated, simple village folk in the rural India. Even now, in this complicated world of science and technology, the digital age we are so proud of, there are people in the rural India, old women, men, village folk, so simple at heart, so full of affection. Anytime anybody goes into them with so much of reverence and affection, they'll feed you. They don't have much. And beaming with joy all the time, they simply can sleep on the floor and snore, whereas all the educated, clever, wise, rich, aristocratic, scientifically minded, rational folk in the cities, in the air-conditioned room with a huge mattress, they can't sleep well. The logical brain constantly kills you. It's a great demon. Einstein's famous quotation is often given. He said, the intuitive mind is a great gift, and the logical mind is a servant. Unfortunately, we have created a civilization which pampers the servant and ignores the gift. There is an intuitive mind which is beyond logic. A Ramanujan, a Kekule, an Archimedes, an Einstein, all of them intuitively came up with certain scientific truths. The logical mind came later and formulated into a scientific theory. It comes with a kind of a vision which is beyond logic. Maybe a kind of dream, maybe a kind of vision. When the logical mind, the rational mind takes a back seat and goes to sleep. Then they awakens the mind which is not illogical, but not logical, but supra-logical, beyond logic. When the awakening of that takes place, which is called the Dhi, the Gayatri Mantra speaks about, which is called the Vijnanamaya Atman, then in that awakened mind, the supreme truth flashes. Beyond that is Ananda Maya Atman. You are full of joy. Archimedes, when he was bathing, then the buoyancy, the idea came to him, and they discovered the famous Archimedes principle. Then he got up and, Eureka! Eureka! I found out. He did not even realize he was not wearing any clothes. Suddenly it flashes. Kekule was a great chemist. He was worrying about the structure of benzene, which is an aromatic compound. Many of you may know they have aliphatic compound and aromatic compound. The aliphatic compounds like a methane, ethane, etc., they have a linear structure. So Kekule's mind was so conditioned by linearity that he could not realize the structure of benzene as cyclic. So he was deeply worried and thinking about this. Suddenly fell into a kind of trance or a dreamlike state of existence, where the logical mind, the rational mind, suddenly took a back seat, went to sleep. He saw a kind of a vision in which there was a dragon consisting of carbon atoms. And this dragon, full of carbon atoms, opened its mouth and was biting its tail. And he woke up, I have now found out the structure of benzene as being cyclic. C6H6 is a cyclic structure. Srinivasa Ramanujan, the great mathematical genius of India, he went on writing theorem after theorem in his notebook. Hardy was simply wonderstruck. Littlewood, his assistant, how do you write these theorems? What is the proof of these theorems? Like a little child, innocent child, as if he committed a great mistake, he said, Sir, proof, sir? I see that they are true. When you see something as true, you don't need to prove it. Narayan challenged Sri Ramakrishna, have you seen God? Yes, I have seen. When you see God, you don't have to prove God. Suppose you're sitting in my front, I'm talking to you. I ask you, what is the proof that you're sitting here? The proof that you are sitting here is that you are sitting here. That's the proof. What is the proof that I'm here? Prove it. You can photograph, you can videograph and show. That's only a shadow of me. The proof that I am sitting here is that I am sitting here. I am is the proof that I am. That's why Vedanta says, I am, aham asmi, is the Sat. Sat is a supreme existence, and supreme existence does not require proof from anything other than itself. Swayam Prakasha. It is self-revealing, which is called Chit, awareness. And the awareness of existence is bliss or Ananda. And therefore the supreme reality is called Sat Chit Ananda. Simple. So Ramanujan says, I see they are true. And then he says, sir, the problem is, if I want to prove each of one of them, which I can, then so much time will be lost and there's a rush of other theorems coming in. I have to accommodate all of them in a short span of time. Then Hardy smiled and said, Ramanujan, if I as a mathematician have to prove the theorems one by one, each one of them will take a lifetime. Then he said, how do you get these theorems? Where do you get them from? Then Ramanujan was very shy. He didn't answer. You tell me. You keep on writing these theorems. Where do they come from in your mind? Sir, that's a secret. What is the secret? I worship a Devi, a goddess. Namagiri is a place in Tanjavur in Tamil Nadu. The Namakkal goddess, the Devi, my Ishta Devi, whom I have been worshipping since childhood, She comes at the night in my dream, keeps on dictating these theorems, and I get up and write them. Devi, goddess, coming and telling you these theorems in mathematics? Stupidity, irrational, unscientific. You may call it unscientific. Sir, you have the theorems here. Show how they came from. How they came. Where do they come from? Hardy is supposed to have commented, this boy is doubtless a mathematical genius, to be sure, but hopelessly religious. There are some people who are hopelessly religious and mystical and spiritual, who are the salt of this earth, who bring down these theorems and concepts and proofs and formulae and principles from the other world, as it were, from the world which is beyond reason, beyond causation, and give them to us as gems in this present world. They are called prophets, they are called avatars, they are called Mahapurushas, great beings, and they are geniuses in any sphere. So we need the gift of the intuitive mind to be carefully protected. Just now we read the Keshav Chandra Sen's statement of protecting in a glass case. That has to be protected. That should not be played with and unnecessarily thrown away. There is a wonderful statement, mantra in the Shruti, in the Kathopanishad. One has to protect. The aspirant is asked. The spiritual sadhaka, aspirant is told, protect the aspiration which you have very carefully, just as a pregnant woman protects the fetus in the womb. What an imagery! How the mother protects the fetus in the womb with so much of care. What should be eaten, what should be drunk, how she should sit, how she should sleep, how she should regulate herself. Everything is carefully tailored to be able to protect the gentle fetus which is getting formed in the womb. In exactly the same way, the spiritual aspiration should not be played with. A spiritual sadhaka should not move around, shout and play and going to clubs and playing with people, socializing, Facebooks. All of them are slowly killing the fetus within. Be calm, be inward, protect it with carefully. In a glass case, as it were, then is the growth. So he says, Aranyor nihito jata veda garbhaiva subhrto garbhini bhihi. A garbhini, or a pregnant woman, how she protects the fetus. In the same way, protect the spiritual aspiration which is within you, carefully, gently, and with tremendous affectionate care. So these great books that we now read, the Kathamrita, tell us repeatedly that the logical brain will not take you too far. It is the bhakti, it is the supra-logical mind or brain in which spontaneously the love of God arises, for which one of the greatest practices is a deep prayer. So Ramakrishna says, call on God, dako, dakar matan dako. Daka means call on God. Pray to Him with intense prayer. He listens to the sound of the footfall of even an ant. Pipider nupur dhuni tini shunte pan tini kaan khodke. He is quick-eared. There's a small ant with small feet, and the ant is walking on the floor, and the touch of the feet of the ant making a small sound on the floor, even that he is able to hear. Will he not hear the deep cry, the agony and the prayer of a soul in bondage? people like you and me, the sadhakas, crying to God, oh God, give me devotion, give me purity, save me. He shall listen. The faiths in such truths are deeply reinforced and enhanced by respectful study, careful contemplation of such holy books as the Kathamrita. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampathrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamah. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.